Four squares that changed my life. Let me tell you a story from my first grade. I was sitting in my class, and the class teacher walks in and asked us students to draw four squares in our notebooks, and then to color them red, blue, yellow, and green, like this. All my classmates did the work. The whole class fell silent, and there was a scramble to, pick up the pencil box and pick up their books. And I too looked into my bag, found my book, but I had forgotten to take my color pencils. So you would think an activity like this was fun. We are not dealing with numbers, but we are doing something artistic, and every student would be relaxed. But not back in those days. Back in those days, it was serious business to be negligent, and negligence and waywardness were punished severely. So I had to quickly think on my feet, and I started figuring out, how can I get away from this punishment? Is there a way out? So I looked around, and I found a regular pencil, and then I said, all right, let's see how I can escape punishment today. All right. But not knowing to me at that time was, the teachers have an uncanny ability to pick the wrong student or the right student. Although I was sitting right in the back bench, the teacher calls out my name and says, please come over and bring your work. So I took my work to the class teacher's desk. She saw my work and said, slowly and steadily she held onto my ear, pinching it hard. She turned the book towards the class and said, I asked you to color these boxes, and look what Kalyan has done on his paper. He calls this red, blue, yellow, and green. Well, I thought, maybe I can, say what I can do with what I have. But then the teacher said, not only have you forgotten to bring your color pencils, but now you're trying to outsmart me. Saying that, she walked straight to the principal's office. And one small detail, when she walked to the principal's office, she held on to my book in one hand and my ear in the other hand. So naturally, I had to walk along with her, and we went to the principal's office, and she produced my work to the principal and said, look, this time it is the color pencils that he has forgotten. The principal was perhaps in a generous mood that day. And so she saw this and said, all right, ma'am, but at least he has tried to do something. Let it be for now. That day, I learned something very interesting. That if someone were to pinch your ear for long enough, after the pain is gone, you get a sensation of heat. So there you go. As a 6-year-old, your observations are keen. Now, cut to my 7th grade. I was still an average student, doing well in certain subjects, and I had no idea in my life that I'm going to grow up to be a sculptor or an artist. But here I am. Hi everyone, I'm Kalyan S. Rathore, a sculptor now. I say now because I have transitioned from being an average student to being a fairly decent designer and a very inquisitive artist. Cut to 7th grade. When I was in my 7th grade, I don't know who among you have grown up in the 80s, to have an imported gadget or to have a video game, a pocket video game, was a big deal. And then a few privileged students from the school would always carry these nice little games, and they became super popular because of that. So all the friends would huddle around them and request for a chance to play with this game. But I knew there was no chance that I would be able to get one of these games. So 4 more boxes presented themselves to me that day. I went home and I fashioned an old cardboard box with a window cutout in it, with a steering wheel that could adjust a small cardboard car with a spool of paper and where I could wind it. So I made my own pocket game, took it to school the next day. And this time, the commotion again drew the attention of my teacher. But this time, luckily, the teacher was somewhat pleased to see the innovation that I had done. She said, "Not bad. I like the way you have worked on this." And the word got around. And although I was an average student, all the teachers started recognizing me for some creative inputs that I could give. Years went on. I grew up. I did some training in industrial design. I loved geometry from school days, and I worked hard to build a knowledge base for industrial design, and I manufactured a lot of things. I created furniture, I created equipments for hospitals, and so on and so forth. It was pretty satisfying, and I was quite happy and successful at what I did. Until one day, the four boxes, or the four squares, presented themselves again. This time, I felt that what I was doing was good, it was satisfying, but it was, after all, a brief from the client that I would work for. Functionality is the essence of whatever I do. But how can I go beyond this? What beyond engineering? Engineering is great. Engineering is layering logic upon logic. This is when I started dreaming and seeing beautiful shapes in nature. You know, it would look like nature, but then it would go beyond in certain ways. So what were these patterns? I used to wake up and struggle to get my intellect around the shapes and patterns I used to see. But where do I learn this? Is this engineering? Is this art? I stumbled upon quite a few learnings. I figured out what I can do. And these were my next four squares. What can I do with what I have? So you rummage through what you have in your bag, you see what you have, but you figure out what you don't have, and then find a way. So this was my journey a couple of years back when I transitioned from being an industrial designer to a sculptor. But where do I learn? What is this topic even called? So, it so happened that I realized a lot of all these works are based in nature-based science and geometry as a universal language. So I tried to figure out what are those subjects that I can learn. Eventually, my works combine a lot of science and mathematics and works of art. Pretty popular with the Hanumanji that went viral recently. So, the question at this time for me, before I got into art seriously, was, is it engineering, is it art, or is it even engineering versus art or engineering and art? To answer those questions, I did some research, and I figured out that there is always something that resonates with us as humans. A simple sports car is so appealing when, despite spending hundreds of billions of dollars on a spacecraft, it doesn't appeal to our senses in that way. So what are these? What is happening in our mind was my question. That's when I came across these patterns. Now these patterns have a name, which I will tell you subsequently. I was trying to figure out what they really meant for a long time. Somewhere in my senses, I found this to be pretty close to soap bubbles, and the way soap bubbles would come together to form patterns. I realized that there are mathematicians who have worked on this kind of shapes. He's called Boris Delannoy and Gregory Voronoi. So the shapes are Delannoy's triangulations and Voronoj's. But these were complex things that I did not want to dive into. I was trying to figure out if there is a more visceral understanding that I can make out of these shapes. That's when some ideas popped up in my mind. If I were to simply staple a strip of paper and combine 3 of these strips together, they would behave exactly like a soap bubble would, but in 2 dimensions. When I bring these things together, further joining these bubbles, I started getting my own version of the Voronoi. So there you go. The way soap bubbles come together, and using the same technique, but creating my own hack, I was able to create one of my first installations with just paper. So here's one example of the previous slide I was showing you, where the structures now start working exactly as a Delaunay's triangulation, and nature is known to use this kind of structure. But then instead of using the complexity of Delaunay's triangulation and Voronoi, I wanted to figure out what I can do with what I have in my hand. So here's another example. How do we understand efficiency in nature? We all speak about efficiency and what is an effective design that nature turns to. If I were to present to you these 2 chocolate bars, which one would you choose if you want to share those chocolates? The one on the left? Or if you don't want to share your chocolate, which one would you choose? Okay, I think you got the point. The regular chocolate bar is made so that it breaks easily. But this chocolate bar that I have just fashioned for this experiment doesn't break easily because they have hexagonal grids. I speak to my students about things like these, so it connects with them much faster. And the same principle was used in my Guinness World Record, where photographs came together and made hexagonal grids, and the sculpture stands at 16 feet without any structure, without any internal structure other than the photographs. Life always presents you with these 4 boxes. What do you do with it? You rummage through your bag. You try to figure out what you have. And then you try to see what you can do with it. Do you complain that you don't have certain things? Or do you work with the paper you have? And then, without worrying too much about what you know or what you don't know about a subject, you try to experiment, starting with paper and then moving on to metals, like I did. So my question to you is, if you want to create something without being intimidated by jargon of science, can you come up with your own 4 squares? And how would you fill those 4 squares with what you have? Thank you.